You can tell a woman regrets losing you not by the words she says, but by the quiet consistency of her curiosity. She keeps tabs on you, not in a dramatic, possessive way, but in subtle gestures that reveal something far deeper than passing interests. Long after the relationship has ended, she still watches. She still checks. She still listens. This isn't just about nostalgia. It's a quiet echo of emotional investment that never fully left. She might not text you. She might never say, "I miss you." But she knows where you've been. She notices when you disappear from social media for a while. She observes the people you interact with, the goals you're chasing, the moments you celebrate. And every update is processed through the filter of, what if? That question is the breeding ground of regret. Psychologically, what's happening here is an unresolved emotional attachment. When someone you once loved continues to occupy mental space, it's not always because you want them back. It's because something within the relationship was unfinished. There was a presence, a standard, a kind of emotional depth or stability that she may not have understood in real time. But once gone, its absence becomes loud. And so she watches, not out of malice or manipulation, but out of longing, even if she can't admit it to herself. What many men miss is that women tend to mourn relationships differently. While men often feel the loss suddenly and sharply, women sometimes delay the full weight of that realization. They reflect, they reconstruct. They look back at the man they once had, and only in hindsight do they begin to see what he truly represented. Emotional safety, consistency, challenge, or peace. And by the time that clarity arrives, they are often too prideful or too afraid to circle back, so they do the next best thing. They monitor from afar. This is where your growth becomes powerful. If she regrets losing you, and you've continued becoming the man you were always meant to be, emotionally stronger, focused, grounded, that regret deepens. Because now she's not just watching who you were, she's witnessing who you're becoming. And silently she's asking herself a painful question. How did I let that go? But this isn't about revenge. This isn't about becoming better to be missed. This is about understanding your worth, not in how loudly someone pursues you, but in how quietly they can't stop looking back. Regret is often silent. It doesn't show up in apologies. It shows up in those quiet follows, likes, story views, and random questions through mutual friends. So if you notice that she's still tuned into your life, even without a word, don't chase that attention. Recognize it, respect it, but above all, let it remind you. The kind of man who is genuinely missed is the one who never had to beg to be seen. He became unforgettable by being fully himself. One of the most telling signs that a woman regrets losing you isn't something she openly admits. It shows up in her comparisons. Subtle, quiet, but deeply telling. She meets someone new, maybe even falls into another relationship, but somehow the new guy never quite measures up. Not because he isn't attractive, not because he lacks potential, but because in her mind he exists beside the memory of you. And that memory, real or idealized, sets a standard she didn't realize she was holding until you were no longer there. This isn't about ego. It's about emotional imprint. When a woman has experienced a man who provided emotional safety, mental stimulation, and deep presence, that becomes her unconscious reference point. Even if she left thinking the grass was greener elsewhere, she quickly learns that connection isn't always about novelty. It's about depth. And that depth is rare. Psychologically, what's happening here is what's known as emotional benchmarking. After a meaningful connection, the brain doesn't reset to zero. It compares. It remembers. It evaluates new experiences against what felt emotionally resonant. So when she meets someone who can't challenge her the way you did, who doesn't listen with the same intentionality, who can't make her feel secure without controlling her, she starts noticing the absence of what you offered. And in that noticing, regret quietly takes root. What's most ironic is that many women won't talk about this out loud, even to themselves. They'll continue in relationships that look good on paper, but feel shallow in practice. Because admitting they lost something rare would also mean confronting the fact that they misjudged it, and that's hard to swallow. So instead, they live with the quiet weight of comparison. You become the unspoken standard no one else seems to meet. But this isn't your cue to gloat. It's your cue to grow. Because the truth is, her comparison isn't just about who you were. It's also about who you're becoming. If you're evolving, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, then the gap between you and everyone else in her orbit widens. And the regret deepens, not because you're trying to prove anything, but because your growth reveals what she failed to fully value. This is why men who carry emotional depth, vision, and self-awareness become unforgettable. They don't just pass through a woman's life, they shape it. They leave behind a sense of what's possible. And once she's experienced that, settling becomes unbearable. So if you've ever wondered whether she still thinks about you, don't ask. Just pay attention. If she keeps finding reasons to bring up your name, your insights, your energy, even in comparison to others, it's not just about memory, it's about loss. And more importantly, it's about realization. Because when a woman starts measuring others by the standard you set, it means you didn't just leave, you left an impact. An impact, unlike affection, doesn't fade, it echoes. When a woman truly regrets losing you, one of the most fascinating and emotionally revealing signs is when she begins to romanticize the past. Not in a superficial way, but through specific, personal memories. Moments that, at the time, may have seemed ordinary, but in hindsight have become golden. She'll bring up that inside joke you shared. She'll recall that one conversation at 2 a.m. when you told her something raw and honest. She may even remind you of how you used to say certain phrases or how you made her feel understood without needing to explain herself. This kind of reflection isn't just nostalgia, it's regret wrapped in emotional memory. Women tend to reflect deeply, especially after they've had space and time to evaluate what you meant in their lives. These little flashbacks are her emotional mind's way of reconciling with the loss of something real. The subconscious speaks in memory, and when the heart is unsettled, it reaches for what once brought it peace. Now here's the important part. When a woman starts bringing up these memories unprompted, she isn't doing it just to make conversation. It's a form of reaching out without making herself vulnerable. She's testing the emotional waters. She's checking to see if you remember too, if you feel what she feels. Because for her, those memories aren't just about you, they're about who she was with you. That version of herself may have felt more alive, more seen, more valued, and she's not only missing you, she's mourning the part of herself that only existed when she was with you. From a psychological lens, this is called emotional anchoring. You became an anchor in her memory for a time in her life that carried weight, meaning, and emotional depth. When current experiences don't measure up, the brain naturally gravitates to those anchors. And because emotion is stronger than logic, those memories feel more intense with time, not less. But what makes this even more powerful is that it often comes after she's tried to move on. She's explored new connections. She's tried to forget. But nothing quite replaces the feeling of being seen, heard, and emotionally mirrored. So she returns, mentally at first, to the moments that mattered. And sometimes she brings you with her in conversation, not to reopen a door necessarily, but to admit to herself that she's standing in front of one she never fully closed. As a man, how you receive this tells her everything. You don't need to chase her down. You don't need to interpret every word. Just listen. Stay grounded in the knowledge that your presence left a lasting impression, not because you were perfect, but because you were real. When she starts reminiscing, don't mistake it for small talk. It's emotional proof that you're not just part of her past. You're a chapter she keeps rereading because the meaning hasn't faded, it's grown. One of the most understated but telling signs that a woman regrets losing you is when she starts finding subtle ways to re-enter your life. Not directly, not boldly, but in small, almost unnoticeable ways. Maybe it's a random message on your birthday, a comment on your story she didn't have to leave. Or she suddenly shows up at the cafe you both used to visit, acting as if it's all just coincidence. But deep down, you know it's not. These moments aren't random. They're deliberate attempts, cloaked in casualness. Why does this happen? Because pride and vulnerability often collide when regret is involved. She may feel the weight of what she lost, but she doesn't know how to bridge the gap between silence and sincerity without exposing herself. So instead of saying, "I miss you," she says, "I saw your post. Hope you're doing well." Instead of reaching out meaningfully, she creates proximity, hoping you'll be the one to initiate the. It's her way of asking if there's still a door open without having to knock too loudly. Psychologically, this behavior is a form of indirect repair attempt. It's a subconscious negotiation between the desire to reconnect and the fear of rejection. She wants to feel close to you again, but she's not ready to be vulnerable. So she settles for being near you, digitally, socially, emotionally, even if from a distance. These moments are her way of saying, I haven't forgotten, even if her words never admit it. And here's the twist. She may not even fully understand what she's doing. To her, it might feel like a passing urge or just checking in. But for a man who knows his worth and understands the rhythm of human emotion, the patterns are unmistakable. Because a woman who truly moves on doesn't look back. But a woman who regrets, she circles back. Not always physically, but emotionally. Repetition reveals emotion. So how should you respond? That depends on who you've become in the meantime. If her return feels like growth, healing, and genuine reconnection, then maybe there's something worth exploring. But if it feels like confusion, convenience, or temporary loneliness, then it's not about love. It's about regret wearing a mask. The key is to stay grounded. You don't need to validate her or decode every message. Just pay attention. She's not trying to rewind the past. She's trying to visit a version of herself that felt alive around you. That version might not exist with anyone else. And deep down, she knows it. Because in the end, when a woman creates reasons to come close without ever saying why, it's not the words that matter. It's the intention behind the silence. And that silence often screams louder than any apology ever could. One of the most paradoxical signs that a woman regrets losing you is when she begins to grow after you're gone. Not while you were together, not when you asked her to evolve or encouraged her toward the better version of herself, but only once you've stepped away. That sudden glow up, the emotional maturity, the career drive, the therapy sessions, often they don't begin until after the relationship ends. And while at first glance it may seem like she's simply moving on, the truth can be far more layered and revealing. Growth in the aftermath of love often stems from reflection, from reckoning with one's own shortcomings. When a woman begins to change after you've walked away, it's usually because she realizes, too late, the value of what she had. Not just the relationship, but the kind of man you were. How your presence challenged her, held her accountable, or gave her emotional clarity. You might have planted seeds in her that she ignored during the relationship, but now, in your absence, those seeds are finally taking root. Psychologically, this is known as post-relationship identity rebuilding. It's a form of redefinition that happens when someone loses a relationship that carried significance. And sometimes that significance wasn't fully recognized until it was no longer available. So she begins to ask herself difficult questions. Why did it fall apart? Why did he stop reaching out? Why do I feel the urge to become who he once believed I could be? There's a subtle pain in that kind of transformation. Because even as she evolves, even as she becomes more of the woman you once hoped to see, there's an underlying awareness that it took your absence to activate it. And that realization often sits quietly in the corner of her mind, especially when others begin to compliment her growth, not knowing the silent inspiration behind it. But don't misunderstand, this isn't about becoming bitter or resentful. If anything, it's a testament to your impact, because you weren't just someone she dated, you were a mirror, a catalyst, a reference point for what healthy masculine presence looks like. And the fact that she is now trying to embody traits you once encouraged tells you everything. It's not performative. It's redemptive, a silent way of saying, I wish I had listened then. So, what do? When you notice this, you let her grow from a distance without attachment or expectation. Her evolution isn't your responsibility anymore, but it is a reflection of your influence, and that's powerful. Because true impact isn't just measured in the moments people have with you. It's measured in who they become because of you. And when a woman becomes better after losing you, don't chase it, don't correct it, just understand. Growth, born from regret, is still growth. But your value? It was always clear. She just sees it now with eyes that are finally open. There's one sign that often slips beneath the radar, but when it happens, it speaks volumes. When she avoids mutual spaces. Not because she wants nothing to do with you, but because your presence brings back too much. Too many emotions, too much clarity, too much of what she tried to suppress. It's not that she's over it. It's that being around you reopens something she hasn't figured out how to close. Avoidance isn't always rejection. Sometimes it's self-preservation. When a woman truly regrets losing you, the last thing she wants is to stand in front of you and feel exposed by her own heart, so she stays away. Not because she's moved on, but because she hasn't. Because seeing you might undo the fragile story she's been telling herself about why it ended, about why she left, about who she needed to become without you. From a psychological lens, this is a coping mechanism called emotional distancing. It's not the same as indifference. It's often the opposite. It's a strategy people use when being near something or someone they once valued deeply creates internal conflict. You become a reminder, a reflection of both what was good and what was lost. So instead of facing it, they create space, hoping time will do what conversation cannot. But what's more revealing is how she behaves within that distance. If she avoids eye contact, changes the subject when your name comes up, or downplays how meaningful things were, pay attention. That's not detachment, that's discomfort. Because emotionally detached people don't fumble for composure. They don't dodge energy, they confront it, or they move through it. But regret makes people linger in between. It traps them in avoidance, while their heart still remembers everything. This is where your presence, your emotional strength, and your self-awareness become your power. You don't need to force clarity. You don't need to demand answers. When she avoids you, let her. But don't mistake silence for closure. It's not. It's often a sign that she's still wrestling with the truth. Your impact wasn't temporary, and your absence didn't erase it. That's the paradox of being unforgettable. People don't always come back and tell you. Sometimes they simply carry the weight of your presence in the way they walk around your memory, tiptoe around conversations that touch your name, or show up everywhere but where you are. And when you realize that, you begin to understand. The true measure of your worth isn't how many people chase after you when you're gone. It's how many people feel the void but can't bring themselves to say it. So remember this. When your presence becomes too powerful to be ignored and your absence too heavy to forget, you've already left your mark. You don't need her to say it. Her silence already did.